Hello. So today I'm continuing my videos on games that I own but have only played once. And next up is Kemet, which I played one time with a friend of mine back in 2016. I seem to remember that we enjoyed it, so I'm not sure again why we didn't play it or why I've never played it since then. But anyway, that's what my video will be on. This is the original version. I think came out around 2012, and I'll be explaining the rules that came with this version. I think one of the expansions came out with a new version of the rules. I'm not sure what the changes are in that. And I know there was a Kickstarter for an even newer version of this called Kemet Blood and Sand, I believe, that's due out sometime pretty soon, and I believe it's got an even newer version of the rules that has more changes. But anyway, I will be doing my playthrough, and my rules overview will be on the original rules that came with this version of the game from 2012. So let's get started with setup. Alright, first you put the board, which is kind of a long board, in the middle of the table. It's a two-sided board, so there's a side for 3 and 5 players and a side for 2 and 4 players. I'm going to be playing 3 players, so I've got it set up on the 3 to 5 player side. Alright, next all these power tiles are placed somewhere near the board. You've got white power tiles, blue power tiles, and red power tiles, and they have a level, so all the level ones I have in this row. Level, you can tell by the Ankh symbol here, the level. So level 2s, level 3s, level 4s, and that's the same for each color. Okay, each temple on the board gets one of these temporary victory point, these round victory point, and the temples on the board for the 3-player are here. You can tell the temples because they have this obelisk in them. So that's a temple, so it gets a temporary, and this is a temple, so it gets a temporary. Now there are some other spots that have an obelisk like this one, but this is called the Sanctuary of the All Gods. It's not a temple. And there are some temples over here on this side of the board, here and here, but in a 3-player game, on a 3-player game, you do not use this side of the board. Anything on the eastern side of the Nile is not used in a 3-player game, so we'll only be playing on this side. So this temple and this temple will not be available. As I said, this is called the Sanctuary of All Gods, and these permanent victory point markers are placed there. You can tell the permanent victory point markers because they're square and not round. Then there's some other victory point markers that are just placed here near the board somewhere. Alright, on the board, for a 3-player game, there's 3 cities, one here, one here, one here, and they're each broken up into 3 districts. So each player will choose a city that they're going to start, or that will be their city for the game. Each player will choose an individual player board, and they're kind of broken up by the color you want to be. It's hard to tell that, and it doesn't really explain it in the rules, but this board is, I think, is for the yellow players. The characters kind of match what's on there. This board is for the blue players, and this board here is for the red players. So you kind of decide what board you want, and then that goes with an associated color, although that's not explained in the rule. Each player will take 5 action tokens, which are these round tokens. And then each player will take one of these prayer point markers that has the Ankh symbol on it and place it on the number 5 on the prayer point track. Each player starts and only has 12 units, and they'll place 10 of those in the city they chose. with no more than 5 in one district. You can never have more than 5 units in a troop. A troop is a group of units that are in a space. So you can never have more than 5, except for there's some of these power tiles you can acquire that can let you have more. But the base rule is no more than 5. So you'll distribute 10 of your starting units amongst your 3 districts in your city. No more than 5 in one district. So let me do that for each player. Okay, so I got red set up here, blue set up here, and yellow here. Again, total of 10. That leaves each player with 2 units in their reserve. Each player takes 6 battle cards. Now, in the rules, I couldn't find anywhere where it says which 6 battle cards you get, but the edges of these battle cards have a color on them. So the yellow go to the yellow player, the blue to the blue, red to the red, and there's actually some other colors that you can be 5 other, there's a total of 5 possible players that can play the game. So there's I don't know, green and black or something. Anyway, but so you can tell your battle cards by the colors on the side here. So these are for yellow, and then it's also not mentioned in the rule book, but I believe on the player boards it shows a space for your battle cards here and your discarded battle cards here. So I put my battle cards for my players in that space next to the player board, although in the rules that came with the game there's no mention of that, but I'm assuming that was the intention. And each player will get 3 pyramids. That's these large D4s. There's a white and a blue and a red for each player. Then each player will get 1 divine intervention card, which is these. Does not say in the rules to shuffle this deck, but I'm assuming you're supposed to, so I did shuffle it. Then each player gets 1, and there's a slot or a space marked on the board with the same back as this, that I'm assuming that's where you're supposed to put your divine intervention card. Again, it doesn't specify that in the rules. That's just what I'm assuming the intention was. Now, players look at what their divine intervention cards are, but you probably want to keep those face down so the other players can't see them. They each have a special power, and to know what that is, there is a little pamphlet that comes that shows what each of these divine intervention symbols means. So for this one that my yellow player got, you can see it is this one, and it is raining fire, and that lets you destroy 1 enemy unit on your turn in the day phase, and it costs 1 prayer point to play it. We'll talk more about divine intervention cards in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that now since we're drawing 1 for each player. Okay, got 1 divine intervention card for each player. Again, if some of these things I'm saying that are not in the rules, if anybody knows that they are and that I just missed it, please let me know. The next thing in the rule book for setup, it says that players will choose the turn order randomly, but it doesn't say anywhere that I could find that you're supposed to use these turn order markers and place them up here on the board to show the turn order. But again, just going by experience, I'm assuming that's what you're supposed to do. So randomly determining the turn order at the beginning, I'm just going to do yellow, blue, and red. Again, this is for 3 players. If you're playing with 5 players, then the turn order markers would go over here. But the turn order at the beginning set randomly, so I'm doing yellow, blue, red, just because that's the order I've got my boards laid out here. Next, players will determine how to allocate their pyramids in their city. You can either have 3 pyramids on the board to start the game, all at level 1, or you can have one at level 2, one at level 1, and the other one at level 0, which just means it's not on the board. I'm going to do 1, 1, and 1 for everybody. So to set the level, you just set it to the number the level is on top, so that would be a level 1. And you just put it on this pyramid space in the district. So 1, 1, and 1, and I'm going to do that for all the players. Okay, I've got everybody's pyramids set up at level 1. And that is set up, and now we're ready to play. One thing I wanted to mention, there are a couple of other pieces, these creatures, a couple of extra battle cards that come into play depending on powers that you get. Oh, also some of these extra action markers. And then there's a couple of victory point markers here that are level 2s. Nothing in the rules mention it, but I'm assuming they're kind of to make, if you need more of the level 1s, then you can exchange the level 1s for level, 2 level 1s for a level 2. But anyway, again, that's not mentioned in the rules. Alright, so the game is played in a night phase and a day phase, with the night phase first. And you keep cycling through those phases until somebody wins the game. You can have, I guess the standard game is when somebody reaches 8 victory points. You can have a longer game extending it to 10 victory points. So players just decide that. Okay, the night phase is first. So the first thing that happens in the night phase is each player gets 2 prayer points. So they move up on their prayer point scale, their Ankh marker there. Okay, the next thing that happens in the night phase is each player receives a divine intervention card. So we've talked about these a little bit. You can look in that little pamphlet that shows what each one means. But anyway, next thing in the night phase is each player will get a divine intervention card. Now, when you play, these cards is determined by what it, kind of the icon here. So this icon means during the day phase. So on your turn during the day phase, you can play this. It doesn't count as one of your actions, but you do have to pay the prayer point. So if you play that, then you spend 1 prayer point. This icon means that you play it during battle. And again, if you play this in a battle, you'll have to pay the prayer point cost when you reveal that. But we'll talk about that more when we get to battles. Okay, the next thing that happens in the night phase is if you have some of these power tiles that have a night effect, which would be this symbol here, then whatever that power tile does will take effect. And this same pamphlet that shows the divine intervention tiles also shows what each of those power tiles do. For instance, one that looks like this, you gain 1 strength in battle. That night power one I was just showing, it says reinforcements during the night phase you add 4 units to a troop in your city. So anyway, the next thing in the night phase, if anybody has any of these power tiles, then those take effect. And then the final thing you do in the night phase is determine the player order. For the first phase of the game, since that's determined randomly, for the first turn you don't do that, but in any following night phase, the player with the lowest amount of victory points gets to determine the player order. So then you go on to the day phase, and this is where you'll go in turn order. So in turn order, each player will play one of their action tokens onto their board and apply its effect. And then that will repeat until all players have played all 5 of their action tokens. And then you'll have a final part of the day phase, which is distributing prayer and victory points. So let's go over what each of these actions is. Now, also during the day phase, each player has to put at least one of their tokens in each of these 3 levels of their pyramid. So again, you have to at least put 1 token in each of these 3 levels. This level is only if you have the power card that, if you have the power tile that gives you the gold action token, and then you can use that to take one of these actions. Because when you take one of these actions, then you can't take it again. So if you had taken both these actions and you had the gold action token, then you could play it there and take one of these actions again. But anyway, let's go over what each of these actions are. So each of these actions with the eagle, white, red, or blue, or maybe that's not an eagle, it's some kind of bird. Anyway, when you put an action token on there, then you can buy a power tile of that color. And to buy a power tile, you have to have a pyramid at the level of the power tile you want. So, for instance, yellow here, he's going to take a white buy power tile action. Well, his white pyramid is at level 1, so that means he can buy any level 1 power tile. And the cost is equal to the number of Ankh symbols there, so they each cost 1 prayer point. So if you buy one, then you take the tile and put it in your play area, and then its effects will be permanent for you. So if white bought this, he would put in his play area. It costs 1 prayer point, and now he has this effect, which any future power tiles that he buys cost 1 less prayer point. So the next time if he bought a level 1, it would cost him nothing. If he bought a level 2, it would cost him 1. But again, since all his pyramids are at level 1, he could not buy a level 2, 3, or level 4 power tile. So you have to, depending on the color choice of which one you just action space you take, you can buy a power tile of that color, but no higher than the level of your pyramid. You can buy a lower level, so if your pyramid was at level 3, you could buy a level 1, 2, or 3 power tile. Okay, so that explains all of these. Oh, one other thing. You can never buy 2 of the same power tiles or 2 power tiles that have the same power. So for instance, you couldn't buy this power tile and then buy this other power tile that's identical or has the same power. Or you couldn't buy this red level 3 power tile that gives you 1 permanent victory point, and also in another turn you couldn't buy this blue level 3 power tile that gives a victory point, even though it's not the exact same tile because it's a different color. It has the same power, so you couldn't buy it. So again, you can't buy identical tile or a tile that gives you the same power more than once. Alright, the next space is the pray space, and that just gives you 2 prayer points. So you'll just move your prayer point marker up, 1, 2 if you take that action. And this one's the same, so if you take this action or this action, they're both the same, pray, and you get 2 prayer points on your prayer point scale. Okay, another action you can take is the raise pyramid level. So when you take that action, you can raise the level of one of your pyramids by as much as you want, as long as you can pay for it. So if and the amount of prayer points you pay to raise it is equal to the level you're raising to. So if if yellow took this action to raise pyramid, and he chooses white, he wants to change his white level. Well, if he wants to go to level 2, then he has to pay 2 prayer points. So he would move his prayer point marker down 2. Now he could raise it again to level 3 with the same action, but that would cost an additional 3 prayer points. So 1, 2 for the first one, and then 1, 2, 3 for the second one, and he would be out. So you can raise one pyramid. You can't choose 2 different pyramids and raise one by each level, but you can raise one as many levels as you want, as long as you can pay for it. And again, up to 4, which is the maximum. All right. Another action you can take is the move, and that's the same for this one and this one. They're both the move action. So when you take the move action, you can move 1 troop, and again, a troop is a space that contains a group of units. So this is 1 troop, this is 1 troop, this is 1 troop. So when you take a move action, you can move 1 troop, and the default is 1 space. So for instance, you could move all of these guys here, with the move action, 1 space. There are some power tiles that can increase your movement capacity that, may increase your movement by 1, so then you could move 2 spaces. Now that's one way to move. You can, if you're playing with more players and you're using both sides of the board, you can cross the Nile with 1 movement at these spaces that show these arrows. So, it would cost 1 movement to move across to over to here, or 1 movement cross over here. There's another space up here, and another space where you can move across the water from here to here, 1 movement point. Again, in a 3-player game, which I'm playing, you don't use this side of the board, though you do use this temple here. So everything on the left side of the Nile there is used in a 3-player game. Okay, another way you can move, and probably the most common way that I found, I did play this game yesterday just so I would have the rules down. So what I found, this is the most common way, at least for when I played it, that you can move, is any place where you have a pyramid, you can teleport from a pyramid space to any space that has an obelisk. So here, 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 or here. Any space that has an obelisk, you can use a movement action to teleport there for 2 prayer points. So if yellow took a movement action, he could say, okay, I'm going to teleport from this pyramid here to this temple here, and just spend 2 prayer points, and that's a legal move. And according to the rules, teleporting doesn't actually use your movement capacity. You do have to spend action on a movement to teleport. So as I said, I could teleport to this temple, but then I still have 1 movement I can use, because teleporting does not use up your 1 movement capacity. So then these guys could then still move out into this space if they wanted to. But of course you do have to pay the 2 prayer points for the teleport. Now you can't teleport from an obelisk back to a pyramid, although there are, I think, some power cards or power tiles that maybe allow you to do that, and I believe there's divine intervention card that you can play that allows you to teleport from an obelisk. No, the divine intervention just lets you teleport a troop onto an obelisk. I guess you could play that to teleport even if you're not in a space that has a pyramid. But there is one power tile called teleport that does let you teleport your troops from an obelisk. So normally it's from a pyramid to an obelisk, but if you have that power tile, you can teleport from an obelisk, I guess, to another obelisk. I'm not sure. Yeah, I just looked it up, and using, if you have that teleport power tile, it lets you teleport from an obelisk to another obelisk. So there's no way to teleport from an obelisk back to a pyramid. You can only teleport normally from a pyramid to an obelisk, and then if you have this power tile, you can teleport from an obelisk to another obelisk. All right, and then the final action we haven't talked about is if you take this action, that is the recruit action. So if you take that action, you can spend prayer points to recruit units from your reserve into your city. So for each prayer point you spend, you can recruit one unit, and it has to be placed in your city. Of course, you can put it in any of the districts that you want, as long as you don't go over the 5 units per troop limit. And so, like if Yellow wanted to recruit both of those, he could spend 2 prayer points, recruit both of these guys, and put both of them in this district, and that would reach the max of 5. Or he could put one in here and one in here. So, however you want to do it. Now, if you ever move into a space, so if you took a move action and you end up moving into a space with another player's units, so if this guy took a move action and he teleported, oh, and I don't know if I mentioned, but when you're moving units, you don't have to move all of them that are in the troop. So if I wanted to move, I could move all of these one space or teleport all of them to an obelisk. Or if I just want to teleport 3 of them, I could teleport 3 here. So now, let's say I did that, and now it's Blue's turn because of the turn order up there, yellow, blue, so Blue's turn. So, we'll just say he decides to take a movement action also, and he teleports 4 of his units into the same space as me. Well, that's going to start a battle. So let's talk about battle. Well, first, just let me mention, when Yellow first teleported those troops in there, and he was in there by himself, then he controlled this temple. So he should have taken this temporary victory point marker and put it in his area. And he keeps that as long as he controls that temple. Now, if after this battle Blue ends up controlling this temple, then Blue would take this temporary victory point marker. So these can change. If you ever get a square permanent victory point marker, then you always keep those. But let's go back to, we wanted to do our battle example. So if you ever have units in the same space like we have here, then you have a battle. Alright, so when you have a battle, the player that moved his units into the space with units that already occupied and controlled a space. The ones moving in are the attacker, the ones that were already there are the defender. So the first thing that happens is each player involved will choose 2 of their 6 battle cards. So let's look at these battle cards. They have a strength, so that's a strength of 1, that's a strength of 3. They have a damage value, which is what this blood drop means, and that's the actual number of enemy units that you'll eliminate in the battle. And then some have a protection value, which blocks from the enemy's damage value. So that's kind of like a block of this 2 protection would block an enemy that did a 2 damage. So those are the values you look at So each player will choose two. You have to choose two of your battle cards. So, just say, choose this one and this one. Um, then of the two you choose, you immediately have to discard one. Now, of course, you're doing this without the other player seeing. So we'll just say, okay, you decide, all right, I'm going to play this one. Then you have to discard the other one. And that won't be available to you in the next battle you have. Neither of these cards you've chosen, the one you immediately discard or the actual one you're going to play, are going to be discarded over here. And so in the next battle you get in, you'll only have four cards to choose from. The next battle after that, you'll only have two cards to choose from. And finally, once all six of your battle cards have been played, then you can pick them up and you'll have them all available for your next battle. But we'll just say, for this battle, I chose the two, discarded this one. This is the one I'm going to play, and I'll put that face down until the other player is ready. Now, at this time, you can also, if you have divine intervention cards, like this player has this one, you can decide, yeah, I'm going to play this. You can see it can be played in a battle, and you actually play that under your battle card so the other player doesn't know what you're playing. And, of course, you will have to be able to pay the prayer point for that to play it. So, one player will choose his battle card and any divine intervention cards that he's going to play. The other player does the same, chooses, two battle cards, picks one. So we'll just say blue chooses, he's going to play this one and discard this one. And we'll see if he has a divine. He doesn't have any divine intervention card that he could play in the battle. This one could be used, but well, no, it couldn't, because we're showing blue as the player that moved in there. He's the attacker, so it's his turn, and this is you play on another player's turn. So anyway, I'll say, all right, so both these players have chosen their battle cards. They reveal what they've played. Then you add up the strength. So the strength shown on the card is added to the total of units you have in the battle. So blue has 4 units plus 3, a strength of 3. So he has a total of 7. Now again, a player may have some of these power tiles, like if a player had this power tile, then that adds 1 strength when he's the attacker in battle. So there are some power tiles that could come into play, but for this base example, there's not. So he's got 3 plus his 4 blue units. He has a total of 7 strength. Yellow here has 2 plus a total of 3, so he's only got 5 strength. So blue is the winner. So whoever has the higher total strength after totaling up divine intervention card, battle cards, power tiles, units, they are the winner. So in this case, blue won. Then you do damage. So blue is doing 2 damage, but one of it is blocked by this 1 protection on yellow's battle card. So he would do 1 damage, so yellow would have to lose 1 unit, which would go back into his reserve. Now, yellow did 2 damage plus 2 from the divine intervention card they played, which they would have had to pay a prayer point. So they're doing a total of 4 damage, which none of it is blocked by blue's cards, so he would lose all 4 of his units. Now, even though he has no units left, he's still considered the winner. However, he would not gain a victory point. So normally, if you are the attacker and you win the battle and you still have a unit left, at least 1 unit left after the battle, then you receive a permanent victory point for winning that battle. If you're the defender and you win the battle, you don't receive a victory point. You can only receive the victory point for being the attacker and being the winner. So there's not any like turtling in this game. If you want to get victory points, you need to be the attacker. If there's a tie in strength, then the defender is the winner. Now, normally, let's just say that this card wasn't played, so blue only lost 2 of his troops, just so we can give an example. So normally we say blue's the winner. He won this battle. He lost 2 of his troops, but he still had 2 left, so he would get a permanent victory point for winning. And then yellow has to decide whether he wants to retreat or recall. So if yellow decides, well, I'm going to recall, then he takes both of his troops that remain there and returns them to his reserve and gets 1 prayer point for each one. But if he decides he just wants to retreat, then blue decides which adjacent space he retreats to. Now in this case, he could only retreat him to this space. However, if this space contained any units, he wouldn't be able to retreat. So he would have to recall. Now, if, as we showed originally, where blue ended up losing all his units, even though he won the battle, as I said, he wouldn't get the victory point, and even though he won the battle, yellow would not have to retreat because he doesn't have any units left there. Then, as I mentioned, the battle cards that were used are discarded and not available to be played by those players again in the next battle. They'll only have the 4 battle cards that remain in their battle card pile again until they've played all of them. Then once they've done that, they can pick them back up, and during the next battle they'll have all 6 available again. All right, one of the things we haven't talked about is these creatures. Well, some of these power tiles that you can acquire, we'll just look at this one, give you a creature. So if yellow acquired this power tile, bought this blue power tile, well, that gives him this elephant. Well, as soon as you acquire a power tile that gives you a creature, you put that with one of your troops, in a city with one of your troops, and then it has to stay with that troop. If you acquire a creature and you don't have any units in your city, and they're all out somewhere else on the map, then you would just put the creature on its tile, and the next time you do a recruit, so that you get a unit in your city, then you could put that creature with that troop that you recruited into the city. So a creature always has to be with units, and it always gets placed with units in a city when you get it. Then it provides some benefit, like this elephant provides +1 strength, +1 movement, and +1 protection to this unit that it's with. And a unit can never have more than 1 creature in its space. Or what I mean to say is a player can never have more than 1 creature in a space with his troop. So this troop couldn't, I couldn't buy another power tile that gives me another creature and put it with the same troop. You can never have more than 1 of your own creatures in the same space. And a creature does not count towards your unit total. So, I had said you can not have more than 5 units in a troop. A creature does not count toward that. So you could still have 5 yellow units here and the creature. And if this troop was ever in a battle and all of the units were killed in the battle, then the creature would just come back to the tile. The creature is not ever destroyed. The creature would just come back to the power tile, and the next time that player recruits units into its city, it could place that creature with them. And each of these creatures have different powers and abilities that are noted on the power tile and in that pamphlet that shows what each of the power tiles do. So finally, after all players have taken all 5 of their actions, then you get to the distribution of prayer points and victory points. So if a player controls this temple, they can discard one of their units from this temple, and then they gain 5 prayer points. If a player controls the temple of all gods, they can discard 2 of their guys from there, and then they get 1 permanent victory point. If a player controls this temple, of course they would have this temporary victory point for controlling it, but then they would also get 3 prayer points. And again, with this temple, if a player controlled this, they would get 2 prayer points at this time. And then if a player controls at least 2 temples, now remember the sanctuary of all gods is not a temple, but if a player controls at least 2 temples, then they would receive 1 permanent victory point. So then at the end of that part of the day phase, after prayer points and victory points are awarded, if any player has at least 8 victory points if you're playing the standard game, or 10 victory points if you're playing the long game, then they win. If 2 or more players have more than 8 victory points at the end of that phase, then it's the person that has the most victory points that wins. If there's still a tie at that point, then it's the player who has the most battle victory points that wins. And if there's still a tie, then it's the player who played earliest in the phase becomes the winner. So that's it. I mean, there's not a lot of rules. It's pretty simple, I guess. Again, there's a few things that seem like they were not included in the rule book, but I think I sussed them out correctly. And again, I'm not going to go over what every different power tile or every different divine intervention card is. That's all listed in this sheet. But why don't we go through some example turns. All right, one other thing I think I forgot to mention in the step through of the rules. If you are moving, you can't enter a player's city unless you start your move from a space adjacent to their city. So if you were in this space and you had 2 movement points, the default 1, and maybe you had a power tile that gives you 2 points, you cannot use both movement points to move into the city. You have to start your action where your units are adjacent to the city. Then for 1 movement you can move in and have a battle. And if you are ever take over an opponent's, see if I had a battle in there and defeated those guys and I controlled that city space, then I can use the power of that pyramid. If it was a level 4 pyramid, I could use the power of that pyramid to buy a level 4 white power tile. And I could use that pyramid to teleport using a move action. Now, I could not recruit units into that city, and the blue player could. So on his turn, he could do a recruit action and recruit units directly in there, and then there'd be another battle. But even if you are the only units in there, even though you can use the pyramid for its powers, you cannot recruit units into that city. So I just wanted to talk about that. Alright, so let's go through some example turns, a few. So I've got the board. I think I got everything set back up, how it was right after setup. So again, the first thing is the night phase, and each player will get 2 prayer points. Each player will get a divine intervention card, and I'm just going to keep these face up since I'm playing alone, just so I know what they are. Now there would be night power effects if anybody had a power tile that had a night power, but since this is the first turn of the game, nobody does. Then the turn order, again, was for the first round is established randomly, however you want to do that. So we've got yellow, blue, red. Alright, now we move on to the day phase with yellow going first and taking an action. And we'll just say yellow, he wants to do a move action, and he's going to teleport these 4 guys to the Temple of All Gods, and of course teleport costs 2 prayer points. And I could do that because I was teleporting from a pyramid that I control to space with an obelisk. Okay, so next in turn order is blue. So now he's going to take an action. He's right here. We'll just say he's going to take a recruit action. So he's going to recruit both these guys. So he's going to pay 2. And he's going to put them in his city, 1 there and 1 there. Okay, now it's red's turn. Well, he has this divine intervention card that can be played during the day phase, has no cost, and what it does is he gains 1 prayer point and each opponent loses 1 prayer point. So let's gain his 1, and each opponent loses 1, and then that's just going to go in the discard. And that's not an action, so he still has his action. So let's just say he's going to let's say he's going to buy a power tile. So he's going to buy a white power tile. And he's going to buy this one that allows any future power tiles to cost 1 less prayer point. But that does cost 1 prayer point to buy that. And the official name of that power tile is Priestess. When you buy a power tile, it costs 1 less prayer point. Alright. Alright, well that's red. So now we're back to yellow again. So he's going to upgrade a pyramid, or raise a pyramid, as it's called. So let's see. He wants to get some better red power tiles, so he's going to raise his red to level 2. So that costs 2. Going to level 2 costs 2 prayer points. Alright, blue's turn again. I'll just say he wants to, he's going to move, and he will teleport these guys from this pyramid up to this temple up here. Now he controls that, so he gets this temporary victory point. We'll just put that in his area here. But that teleport does cost him 2 prayer points. Alright, well back to red. Well, he sees people are starting to take these temple spaces, and he wants to get in on that action, so he's going to do a move action also. And he will teleport these 3 guys to this temple right here. So it has an obelisk. Then he gets that temporary victory point because he controls that. But he does have to pay his 2 prayer points for teleport. Alright. Well, let's see. Yellow's turn again. He wants to get 2 prayer points. And now he's fulfilled the condition of having at least 1 action point in each level. So remember, you have to do that each round. So blue, it's his turn now. He's only got 3 action points left, and he's got to use 1 of them in this level and 1 of them in this level. So he's going to use 1 to get 2 prayer points. Alright, on to Red's turn. I think he is going to move. And he's going to teleport these 3 red guys to this temple. And he'll take this. Now he controls that, so he'll take this temporary victory point. But he does have to pay his 2 prayer points for that teleport. So now he's got 2 victory points out of 8 needed to win, since, again, you can choose at the beginning of the game whether you need 8 or whether you need 10. I'm going for 8. And he's also now fulfilled his condition of having at least 1 in each level. Alright, Yellow's turn again. He's going to buy a red power tile. And remember, his pyramid is at level 2, so he could buy a level 1 or level 2 red power tile. And I think he's going to buy this level 1, which gives him a +1 strength when he's the attacker. And that has a cost of 1 prayer point. And then we'll just put that in his play area. Alright, it's Blue's turn. Now he doesn't like that red has this temple and this temple, because you get a permanent victory point for having 2 temples. So he's going to try to do something about that. So he's going to do a move action. And he's going to teleport these 4 guys to this temple here. Now he's got to pay his 2 prayer points for teleporting, but now we're going to have a battle between blue and red. Alright, so as we talked about in the rules overview, first thing in a battle is each of the players involved will choose 2 battle cards. They'll immediately discard 1, and then the other ones they're going to use. So let me go through and pick what the players are going to choose, and I'll come back. Alright, well, blue, he chose these 2 power cards. Now this is the one he's going to immediately discard, so he's just going to put that over here in his discard area. And this is the one he's going to play, and he's going to play it face down, or, put it out there face down. Both players reveal their cards at the same time. But blue is also going to play this Divine Intervention card that's going to give him +2 protection. So, he would put those out there like that. And red, he thinks he's got less units. He's only got 3 units, and blue has 4. So he's going to try to play higher. He doesn't know exactly what blue is playing, but he's going to play this 4-1. So he's going to keep that one. And then this is the one he's choosing to discard. So he's going to put that over there in his discard. Alright, now both players will reveal what they've chosen to play. And of course, he's got to pay 1, blue's got to pay 1 prayer point for playing that Divine Intervention. But he's got 3 plus the 4 units he has for a total of 7. And red has 4 plus the 3 units he has for a total of 7. Well, tie goes to the defender, so red ends up winning. But blue does 2 damage to red, And red doesn't have any protection on his card, so he's going to lose 2 of his units. So they come back here to his reserve. Now he played 1 damage on his card, but red did play this 2 protect, or blue played this +2 protection. So even though his battle card had no protection, he does have +2 on this, so he's not going to lose any units. Now this gets discarded. So red actually won the battle. Both their battle cards now get discarded. So in their next battle, those cards will not be available to them. Now since red won, blue has to choose whether to recall those units. Remember, if you do that, he could recall them to his reserve and get 1 prayer point for each, or retreat. And if he decides to retreat, which that's what he does, then the red player gets to decide an adjacent space without units for him to move to. And the only adjacent space without units to move to is this space here. It's 1 big space. So that's where he's going to tell him to retreat those units to. So again, because red was not the attacker, they were the defender, they don't get a victory point. Had blue won that as the attacker, he would have gotten a victory point. And since red maintained control of that space, he keeps the temporary victory point that comes along with that temple. Alright, well, it's red's turn. And he's going to probably recruit, I think, since he lost some units there. So he's going to play the recruit, and he's going to recruit 3 units. 1, 2, 3. So he'll recruit all these 3, and he'll put 1 there and 2 there. Alright, well, it's yellow's last turn, and he thinks he is going to... Well, first he's going to play this Divine Intervention card, which he can play on his turn during the day phase at the cost of 1 prayer point, and that just destroys 1 enemy unit of his choice. So he's going to play that, pay a prayer point, and he's going to take out 1 of red's units there. And again, that's not his action. Now he still has his action, so he's going to do a move action, and he's going to teleport these 3 units to this temple. And that's going to cost him his last 2 prayer points for the teleport, but now we're going to have a battle here. Now he knows red's down 2 cards, and one of them his 4-point card, so he's pretty certain he can take this battle, because he still has all of his cards available to him. So let's see what he wants to play. Alright, for his 2 cards he's going to choose, he's going to use the 3 strength 3, 2 damage to play. So he'll put that out, and then this is the one he's going to discard. Now I don't think, one thing I did not mention in the overview, is before the game you decide whether you're going to play and discard these cards face up or face down. Or, I'm sorry, the discarded cards, you decide together as the players whether you're going to put your discarded cards face up or face down. For my game, I'm doing face down. So, he's picked his card. Now red has to pick his card. Now remember, he's only got 4 available to him because he discarded 2 in his battle with blue. So his highest one is a 3, so he wants to take that. But he's got to take 1 that he's got to discard, so he's going to do that. So, alright, so this is the one he's going to immediately discard. And he's going to play his 3 power card. So both players will reveal. Neither one's using a Divine Intervention card. So he shows he played a 3-2. He shows he played a 3-2. So 3 units plus his 3 strength is 6. Plus he has this power tile that he bought. When he's the attacker, he gets +1. So he has a total of 7. against 3 for red plus 2 units is 5. So yellow is going to win. He's going to win this battle. Now, he does 2 damage. Red has no protection, so he's going to lose both his units. But red did 2 damage also, and yellow has no protection, so he's going to lose 2 of his units, but luckily that leaves him 1 there. So now he controls that temple, so he will take this temporary victory point token from red, and that comes to him now because he controls this temple. And now both players have to put their battle card they used in their discard pile. And that is all 5 of yellow's actions. So we go to blue's last action for this round. And he hasn't put one in this bottom row, so he's got to do that. So blue decides, well, he'll buy a blue power tile. And his blue pyramid is at level 1, so he can only buy a level 1. So if we look at the level 1 power tiles, there's recruiting, gives you 2 more units when you recruit. 1 gives you +1 strength when you're defending in battle. So he likes the recruiting, so that's the one he's going to get. Alright, so that's this power tile. Now it has a cost of 1, so he's got to pay his last prayer point for that. And then that just goes in his play area. And now in the future, when he does a recruit action, he can pay for however many he wants, and then he gets 2 additional. Alright, so now we come to red's last action. Now, he would like to teleport his units back to this temple where yellow only has 1 unit to defend there, but unfortunately he's got no movement actions left he can use. So he also has no power points, so he can't raise his pyramid or buy a... I guess he could buy another level 1 tile, since this one lets him subtract 1 prayer point for the cost. So we'll say that's what he's going to do. He's going to buy a level 1 red power tile because he does have a level 1 red pyramid. He likes this one also about getting +1 strength when you're the attacker, so he's going to buy that. Now that would normally cost 1 prayer point, but since he has this power that subtracts 1 prayer point from the cost, he owes nothing, which is good because he has no prayer points. Alright, so that's the end of the actions part of the day phase. Everybody's spent their 5. Oh, and one thing I forgot, when yellow won that battle here, since he was the attacker, he should have gotten 1 battle victory point. Okay, now we're still in the day phase. All the actions are done, but now we do the distribution of prayer points and permanent victory points. So first, the player controlling the Delta Temple here can withdraw 1 of them. So it goes back in his reserve, and then he gets 5 prayer points. So blue decides he's going to do that. He withdraws 1 of his units, so it goes back in his reserve, and then he gets 5 prayer points. Now red controls this temple. He doesn't have to withdraw a guy or anything. He just gets 3 prayer points for controlling this temple. So 1, 2, 3. And then yellow controls this temple. He doesn't have to pay a guy or anything. He just gets 2 prayer points. Now, if somebody controlled 2 temples, 2 of the temples, then they would get 1 permanent victory point for that. But each player controls 1 temple. Nobody controls 2, so nobody's going to get that permanent victory point. But the player controlling the sanctuary of all gods can withdraw 2 units, which yellow will do, and if they choose to do that, then they receive 1 permanent victory point from there. So he'll put these 2 units back in his reserve, And now he's got a total of 3 victory points. He's close to halfway to winning. And that's the end of the first day phase. So now we would go back to the night phase. Now it doesn't say anywhere in the rule book to pick up these action markers, but I'm just assuming that that is what you're supposed to do. Or at least I couldn't find anywhere in the rule book. But then you go into the next night phase, which the first thing is a distribution of 2 prayer points to each player. Then each player gets a divine intervention card, and there is no hand limit on divine intervention cards. Then if any player had a power tile with a night effect, that would happen, but nobody does have that. And so finally we determine the turn order. And the player with the lowest amount of victory points does that. So yellow's got 3. Blue just has 1 for his temple that he controls. And red just has 1. So that's a tie for lowest. So in that case, the player who played earlier in the previous turn gets to determine. So the 2 that are tied for lowest are blue and red, and blue played earlier, so now he would determine the turn order. So he would probably say, well, he wants to go first, wants red to go second, and yellow to go last. And then now we would start with the day phase again, with blue taking the first action and spending 1 of his action points on the board. And that's how the game goes. And again, if a player at the end of the day phase, after you've allocated prayer points and permanent victory points, if a player has 8 victory points, then they win the game. So that's Kemet. Like I said, the rules are pretty easy, really, overall. From this rule book that I have, there's some basic things missing that I think anybody that plays games can, figure out without seeing that. Like I said, I know I saw in a Board Game Geek forums where there's like a 1.5 version of the rule book that comes with one of the expansions. I don't have any of the expansions, but that may correct some of that stuff, and there may be some rules changes. I'm not sure, but anyway, I like I said, I'd played this game yesterday, and then prior to that, it had been 2016 since I played it. But I did enjoy it. I just played it solo yesterday. Solo is 3 players, like I'm kind of doing here in this run through. I think it's fun. I would like to get this to the table again with some friends and play at least a 4-player game, so you're playing with both sides of the board. When I played this previously, 4 or 5 years ago, I was just playing with one other person, so we were only playing on one side of the board then too. So yeah, I think Kemet's a fun game. I don't know anything about the new Blood and Sand version that the latest Kickstarter was on. Apparently there's, some changes in there. I don't know how many, but some changes, and maybe they incorporate some of the expansion stuff. I don't know anything about the expansions either. They probably add some good stuff. If I ever end up where I play this more, maybe I'll try to look up one of those expansions. But fun game. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.